You have big dreams of losing weight and creating a healthy, joyful life. But you find yourself craving sugar, caught up in what the scale says, and diet hopping. Dieting is the old way of losing weight. And the good news is I'm going to give you a new way of eating so you can ditch diets for good and build a healthy relationship with real food. My name is Megan Olson, certified nutrition practitioner, creator of Skinny Fitalicious, and your host of the Dish on Diets show.
Hi, Kristin. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Megan. Good to talk to you.
It's good to talk to you too. Kristin, you and I have been on quite the journey working together for a while. I think we kind of started working together in 2023, but kind of talk to some of the listeners and give a little background about you, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Okay. Well, it's funny that I'm known as Kristin. That's my name, but most people call me Chris. And the funny thing is that when I sign for stuff, I always use my full name. So I'm Kristin on Facebook. Kristin is my work email name. And you know me as Kristin. But just so you know, I'm Chris too.
I didn't know that. That's always learning new things.
Well, it's sometimes helpful to be called Kristin because my husband is Christopher. And so we're Chris and Chris. And everybody says, how do you do that? How come it doesn't confuse you? And it doesn't confuse us at all. It's other people that get confused.
Oh, that's too funny.
We live outside of the Philadelphia area, between Bucks County and Montgomery County. I'm 71 and feeling pretty spry for 71. We have 4 kids who each have an average of 4 kids, so we're blessed with 16 grandchildren.
Wow.
I work part-time as an administrative assistant and occasional substitute teacher in a small church school very near here. I can walk to and from work. And I've been there for about 27 plus years. It happens to be where I went to school and where my children went to school. And I'm not ready to retire at 71 because I have 10 grandchildren in the building right this minute. So that's what I do.
Wow. So you're busy, to say the least.
busy to say the least. Yep, our kiddos keep us pretty busy with all their activities, and so we do a lot.
Good.
But
That's important in life, right? To keep yourself busy and going.
That's right.
Well, do you want to tell us a little bit about your weight loss journey? I'm sure that's kind of why you're here, right? So to talk to us about your journey with weight loss and building some healthier habits. And so kind of talk to the listeners a little bit about your history prior to working with me.
Well, I could just about write a book about my weight loss journey. My journey has been a lifelong journey. But thankfully, I'm a resilient person, and I've been pretty determined to try to figure it out through much of my adult life. It started when I was still a child, and I'm thinking maybe I was about 10 years old. An aunt was visiting our family with her 2 children, and she took some time with me, and she talked up this exciting thing called a diet. Let's put you on a diet. I had absolutely no idea what that meant, but I loved her attention and her little pep talk. Then the next morning, I think she concocted some kind of a shake, which certainly wasn't the kind of milkshake I was expecting. And then to add insult to injury, the rest of the kids were going to have pancakes. Well, I was expecting to follow that nasty shake with pancakes myself, like everyone else. And it came as a real shock that I wasn't going to be allowed to have pancakes because, quote, remember, you're on a diet. So my little brain went, oh, so diet means deprivation? I went and sat on the stairs and I cried.
Oh my gosh.
I thought I was just Yep, I thought I was just fine until this little episode. And then in the ensuing years, I don't particularly ever remember wanting to lose weight, but I eventually came to feel that it was something that other people wanted me to do. So the next significant step in my journey came when I was probably about 13. I know I was in 8th grade, and I found myself at the pediatrician's office with my mom, and the doctor was prescribing some pills, which of course I now know were diet pills. At the time, my mom had been making me have eggs for breakfast when all I really wanted was Cheerios like the other kids. So at that time, I was happy when the doctor said, "Oh, no more eggs for breakfast," and told me to eat cereal. In retrospect, now, I think my mom was probably onto something with having me eat protein for breakfast. But really, all I knew was that I had to do things differently than my siblings. And that was not fun, being singled out and made to feel different, or even like something was wrong with me.
Yeah.
While I was taking those pills, my appetite was certainly curbed. I lost weight and got lots of positive attention from peers. And then one day the pills ended. I had a newly shaped body. So apparently I was done. Well, as you can imagine, I hadn't really learned anything. Thankfully, I was a pretty resilient and happy kid, so I was fine without the pills. And through high school, I was still growing and I was pretty active in sports. I did slowly gain some weight back, but I was cheerful and I enjoyed school life and playing hockey and playing volleyball and being a cheerleader and going to football games. And, you know, I was really into it and I had a blast. I loved my life. And yet somewhere in there, I remember going to Weight Watchers long before the point system. And I remember that some neighbor ladies used to drive me there because I wasn't old enough yet to drive. And it wasn't really my choice, but I was getting the message that I was somehow supposed to do this. But it didn't last long. I was thinking about it. Maybe the neighbor ladies quit going. I don't know. Or maybe I had too much homework. I don't know. It stopped. And then I do remember going to Weight Watchers again later when I was in my mid to late teens because I know I could drive and my friend went with me. But at that time, we were among a bunch of middle-aged women who complained about missing their cocktails and discussed ways to beat the system. I never learned much more than that diet means restriction and deprivation, and you get shamed if the scale doesn't show the right number. I also remember that later in my teens, after my mom had had 7 kids, because I'm one of 7 kids, she decided to do Weight Watchers herself. And I don't remember much about her experience. She didn't ever seem to be suffering while she was doing it. But later she talked about it. And more than one time, I heard her say that it took grim determination to lose weight. So there it was in my head again, that losing weight is hard, it's grim, and it's full of restriction and deprivation. We got married right after college, and pretty soon I got pregnant. And I had this thing in my head. I was determined I was not going to blame weight gain on having a baby. So at that time, I tried to join Weight Watchers while I was pregnant. We were living in England at the time. And the first healthy body weight interaction I had ever experienced came when Weight Watchers would not let me join while pregnant. And I was a little miffed at the time, but, you know, looking back on it, I think, well, how sensible was that? Don't let her restrict while she's carrying a baby. But then fast forward after the baby was born and the postpartum period of being banned from Weight Watchers had ended, I signed right up and started depriving myself of enough calories to support my health and that of my breastfed baby. At a nursing mothers meeting, a friend and leader of the group made the second intelligent observation I had encountered. commenting that a half of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich was probably not enough lunch for a nursing mother and her baby. In retrospect, I appreciate her kindness and genuine concern for the health of my baby and me. But, and of course she was right. Of course she was right. A half a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch while I was trying to nurse a baby.
Yeah.
But anyway, unfortunately, at the time, I was more about losing the weight than looking for intelligent thoughts. So I got thin. I got really thin and probably lost every ounce of muscle I had ever had as an athlete. And then within a few years, I was pregnant again and completely dumped the concept of dieting. I was like, I'm done. When our second son was a year old, we moved from England back to the States, and pretty soon I had baby number 3 coming along. And when she was just shy of a year, I was diagnosed with Graves' thyroid disease. And at first I thought, this is really nuts. At first I thought it was a miracle in the making. I was losing a whole lot of weight without even trying due to the disease. Yeah. And I guess I was thrilled with the weight loss and kind of ignored the fact that I could not sit still. I was so jittery and I couldn't eat much that didn't make me sick.
Wow.
Definitely a pattern of sorely misguided mindset developing here. Yeah. Being thrilled by weight loss to the point of ignoring my health is something stupid that I learned during my journey. And then after I was treated for Graves' disease and it's healed enough to have another baby, we had our 4th child. My endocrinologist, who was a heavy man himself, said, oh, you need to lose weight. Lose weight back to what you weighed when you were sick with Graves' disease. And I know now that was not very helpful.
Wow.
But I figured I had to try and figure this out because, you know, by this time in my life, I realized that I wanted to somehow learn to eat for my health, even though I had not really had any help that was useful in trying to do so. So I read a ton of books and I tried all the things that came down the road and just kept searching for how to take care of myself and how I should eat to accomplish this and lose some weight. And in all my reading and research, I did learn a lot about the kinds of foods that help me feel so much better. But previous to working with you, I never figured out that I could actually eat some fun foods and treats while also taking care to eat the foods that make me feel good. When I did that, I always felt like I was doing something wrong. You know, if I ate the fun foods, oh, that's got to be wrong. I did catch on to the fact that whatever I was going to do had to be something I could keep on doing. I had to do it forever or I would continue in a pattern of losing and regaining weight. But unfortunately, I also learned incorrectly that I had to do it perfectly, restrictively, or I would fail. Anyhow, fast forward to about 5 or 6 years ago, I was still searching for answers and kept reading and trying one thing and another. And Noom was a new thing, so I gave it a try. And 2 things were good about it at that time. It was pretty early on. First of all, they gave me the ability to adjust my calorie range from 1,200 to about 1,500. Still in calorie restriction, but a whole lot better than trying to eat only 1,200 calories. And also, there was a real live person with whom I could interact for the first several months. And so since I knew that whatever I was going to do had to be sustainable for the rest of my life, my first plan was to bump my calorie limit to the highest number. And it was sad that they did not advertise that among people very loudly and clearly. But at least, I was eating at least 1,500 and interacting with a real person. So I was getting some support. And I did manage to lose a significant amount of weight. But in all of my successful weight loss efforts, because a lot of those things that I tried, sure, I lost some weight, but I never learned how to maintain my weight loss. weight loss. All I knew how to do was diet. And ding, 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 ding. That's what the diet industry had planned all along. Thank you, Megan, for finally making that clear. In all the previous attempts at weight loss programs, I never earned maintenance. I had never in all my 70 years learned what it means to maintain. I only ever really knew how to diet and be kind of miserable with or without it. I wasn't happy with all the restriction, but if I ever tried to eat without cutting out certain types of food, I was miserable from feeling like I was somehow failing. So Noom became just another money-making diet gimmick, and I no longer had a real person to interact with, and I refused to pay for a gimmick. But I did learn how to track my calories, and so I continued that habit. But I also became very fearful that although I had lost a significant amount of weight, if I wasn't perfect, I would gain it all back again. I was always feeling like I was kind of at the edge of a precipice, and unless I was perfect, I would fall back into the deep canyon of weight gain. There was no one and nothing to tell me I was doing fine. I would feel bad whenever I chose to splurge on ice cream with the family, or I was craving pancakes or whatever fun foods the family was eating. I felt like a loser at that time for not being perfect all the time, not being able to be perfect all the time. And I now know, with working with you, that was a great big duh. I was actually doing a pretty good job of maintaining my weight loss, but I was never at peace with that because I was still caught up in trying to do it perfectly, and I still really only knew how to diet. I had even during the pandemic, I developed a pretty good habit of walking because, hey, what else was there to do? So I had that going for me. I had a decent habit of tracking my calories, and I was walking, but I was so stressed about trying to be perfect all the time and talking negatively to myself when I wasn't perfect that I was beginning to doubt that I could continue this forever. So that is the story up until I started working with you.
Wow. What a story.
Yeah.
You could write a book. There really is a lot of history there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, so you asked what led me to working with you.
Yeah.
And every time I listen to one of your podcasts with a client, I sit there and think, oh my gosh, they all know. They can remember how they, and I'm like, I can't remember. I guess what I did was I was looking for a recipe for some kind of a low-calorie snack or something, and probably one of your recipes came up in the search. And I guess, I was just kind of wandering down the way you do when you're interested in something that catches your attention. And I do know that I stumbled on the name of the podcast, The Dish on Ditching Diets. And I thought, how awesome is that? That is exactly what I want to do. I want to ditch diets. So I started listening from that day. I started listening daily. I would put you on my earphones and listen to you while I was walking. And I just love trying to wrap my brain around the ideas. But even while I was listening, I kept having doubts that this could work for me. I was so caught up in that diet mentality and the concept that this would be hard for me without being perfect at it. And I even remember cringing at some of the things that you would say because I thought, oh no, that sounds like a diet thing. Oh, like, how do you eat treats sensibly? Or how do I change what I think? It was just like, since I was stuck in the belief that dieting means restriction and deprivation, I couldn't even begin to imagine how one would go about eating treats sensibly.
Mm.
Anyhow, I gradually and slowly over time began to try to change my view on this. I guess that's what changing one's mindset was all about. And I remember later, after we were working together, this is a really funny story. I had listened to one of your podcasts, and at our next meeting, you had asked me what I learned.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't really remember the whole gist of the podcast, but I do remember that it had something to do with a Dairy Queen blizzard. And I think you were talking to a client about needing to eat a blizzard. I think you told her she could totally eat one, and maybe even that she should if she was trying to restrict something she loved.
Mm-hmm. Anyway,
you had suggested that eating a little one rather than a big old honking one would be something she might want to consider. So at our next meeting, I said, I learned that I really had better go eat a blizzard. It was really funny that I did it, but my husband and I went and got a blizzard, and yeah, it was funny that I did it, but I took that podcast as my permission to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize it at the time, but that was maybe one of the first glimpses of what a new way of looking at eating and a new mindset might be.
Mm-hmm.
I ate the blizzard. I completely enjoyed it. And I didn't feel guilty for eating it or like I had to restrict something else because I had eaten it because you told me to.
Right. I gave you permission.
That's right. Gave me the permission to go and do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure exactly how long I had been listening to you before I decided to sign up for the free class. But I kept listening and searching around on your website for quite some time. I tried a couple of times to sign up for a slot with you, and then one day I found an open time and just decided to go for it. And I was so nervous. And because I had always felt judged, not just by myself, by others. And I'm like, oh, am I signing up for something else where I'm going to be judged? I mean, I knew that probably you weren't going to, but I didn't even know what that would look like or sound like. But I remember the first thing you told me to do was just eat however I was eating and track it and then send it to you. What the heck? And I did it. And I felt like you weren't going to judge me because you told me to do it. So I did it. And you didn't judge me. And, you know, I never expected you to give me a food plan because I had heard enough of your podcast and I knew enough to know that you weren't going to be just, here, follow this. And so I was really happy with that. I was happy to be able to try to figure this out with you and what would work for me. And then pretty soon you told me to try to add more protein and that might help not feel hungry and not have cravings. And I'm like, add more protein? I can do that. That's easy. At first, I was struggling to get enough protein because, well, I just hadn't been used to. I mean, I ate pretty well-rounded meals, but how to get enough protein powder to meet my needs was, I don't mean protein powder. I mean, to get enough protein. What I'm going to say is that you introduced me the concept of using some protein powder, and I had never considered that. But I thought, all right, I'll do it. She doesn't steer me wrong. So I tried a few, and some of them were absolute disasters. But eventually, when I found one I liked, I discovered that I love making my own smoothie bowls with frozen blueberry, protein powder, and Greek yogurt. And it's awesome. And some people listening are going to think this sounds crazy, but I eventually started adding frozen cauliflower for more bulk and more freeze in the smoothie bowls. And with the berries and protein powder, I can't taste the cauliflower.
Yeah.
So I say, don't knock it till you try it.
I've had so many clients say about that particular thing. They're like, it makes it so frothy and you can't even taste it. And I'm like, yep.
Exactly. Yep.
Yep.
Anyway, I laugh when I think about the fact that you say over and over, this is all about changing your mindset.
Yep.
And if I had heard about changing one's mindset and making a sustainable lifestyle, but I mean, really, change your mindset. I'm like, what does that even mean?
Right. That's what everybody says, and it's very difficult to explain, I think. Maybe you could do it well.
Well, it really is, and I think it's little things.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to explain, but to me, it's little things that just sort of happened along the way that when I looked back on them, I went, oh yeah, like that story about the blizzard was, oh yeah, look at the way I thought about that. That was totally different than the way I would have thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I started from the early days with thinking that losing weight took grim determination and restriction and deprivation, and I had better be perfect at this or I would fail.
Mm.
So that's, anyways, it's certainly helped a lot. In fact, being on this journey with you and working with you, I just had to work with you. I needed a lot of support and convincing to get eased out of that restriction and deprivation and worry that it would never last unless I was perfect frame of mind.
Mm.
Like so many other people, I was focused on the food and being judged first by others and then by myself.
Mm.
And without your support and encouragement to acknowledge all those little things that I was doing so well,
Mm-hmm.
Where would I have been? The little things are so important to do consistently. That daily walk and planning and tracking my meals, getting plenty of sleep. I mean, I go to bed an hour earlier than I ever used to, and I feel so good about it.
Yeah.
I used to think that I'd be wasting my day if I went to bed earlier. But nope.
Now you think about it differently, right? It's a different perspective, right?
My mindset is different about it. I drink plenty of water. In fact, I keep stopping here and drinking water while I'm talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
I eat lots of protein, and I include fruits and veggies. And you know what? We all know those things are important.
Yep.
But we somehow adopt this, yeah attitude. Like, I've heard all that stuff, and I do it, and it doesn't work. But you helped me understand that those seemingly little things are the keys to success if done consistently. And notice I didn't say if done perfectly.
Right.
Those little things are the keys to success if done consistently. And you also helped me understand that it's normal and expected that we will encounter events and situations where enjoying fun foods and treats is part of real life.
Mm.
And it just sucks the joy out of these sorts of situations to have to feel bad or guilty for celebrating with family and friends.
Mm.
And so with your feedback and encouragement, I learned to appreciate all the good things gradually over time. Notice it's gradually. It was little baby steps. But I learned to stop any negative thoughts that would creep in, like, oh, why did I do that? Oh, that was such a dumb choice. And you taught me how to change that soundtrack. And if I ever hear the negative sound bite trying to play in my head, I've learned to say, nope, I don't think like that anymore. I'm doing great. Look at all the little things I do now.
Yep.
I get to bed early. I drink a lot of water. I walk every day. I plan my meals. I move as much as I can. I'm slowly working on getting stronger. And I keep thinking about all the good things until that negativity has nowhere to sit in my head. nowhere to sit anymore. And then from a nutrition standpoint, you helped me figure out how to balance my meals and snacks, including protein, produce, and fiber. And I love your little thing that doing this will really help me keep my hunger and cravings at bay and help me keep my energy up. That's heck in check.
Yep. Yep.
I remember being almost instantly blown away by how much of a help it was to add a lot of protein.
Yep.
To my breakfast and throughout the day. And I guess one of the biggest differences came slowly as I began to believe that you really weren't going to judge me. And one of the biggest things that helped me overcome my struggles was being given permission to eat the things that I was always deprived of by adults and my childhood and my youth. And even by myself, because I believed that's what I had to do eventually. So I guess the most important things that I learned and achieved during this time was to relax. I'm going to say that I came to understand while working with you that it's all about the averages. That is such a freeing concept to me, to finally understand that I didn't have to do it perfectly every day to be succeeding. It's about doing the little regularly enough to have the averages meet my goals. It's such a sensible concept that had never really been clear to me before.
You mean Noom didn't teach you that?
No, nobody, none of those diets I paid for, none of the books, nothing taught me to I didn't have to be perfect every day, just average. And Megan, I haven't mentioned one of the biggest things you encouraged me about was to ditch the scale.
Yeah.
It was a big moment when I decided that, okay, I'm going to do what Megan said, and I'm just going to quit getting on the scale. I used to think that the scale was what kept me in control. And my mindset has shifted from the belief that success comes from grim determination to it's easy to travel the journey with kindness, consistency, and positive self-talk. And giving myself permission to enjoy the fun foods and times in life without guilt or regret.
Yeah. I remember you telling me too, you learned that you weren't a failure.
Right. I learned that I wasn't a failure. That I'm good. I'm great. I'm doing fantastic. And I never saw that before.
Yeah.
Nobody had helped me see that. And so that was really awesome. And I do have a little bit of advice that I would give to people who are listening. And that is, please don't expect crash diets and speedy results, because they're not permanent. We just can't expect to do something hard by relying on determination, deprivation, and restriction, or weird food combinations for a short period of time for the sake of changing our body shape and expect to be fixed forever. And I think that a lot of people believe that working on your mindset is only for those with big emotional problems. But I want to tell you, people, it is not. It's not about big things. It's about the little things. Just looking at things a little bit differently. It can be so hard. You referenced this earlier, that it can be so hard to convince somebody who doesn't understand that their freedom from dieting has anything to do with how they think.
Yep.
But I now believe that to get permanent freedom from diets, you have to somehow learn to view the world a little bit differently.
Right.
You got to be your own cheerleader. Keep on trying, because the only way to fail is to quit trying. Push yourself to do the little things that seem too easy or like they won't make any difference. Be patient and be kind to yourself if you find you haven't lived up to your own expectations. in hard times, look for the littlest things you can do to help yourself. Always look for the good. You are doing something good. Keep it up. And then you always say, learn how to be the person you want to become. And I love that.
Yeah. And trust the process.
Yeah.
That's what I always to say. I used to say that to you too. Just trust the process.
Yeah, that's the process, right? Yep.
Yeah. Didn't
Yeah.
you tell me, Kristin, on one of our like last calls, you said you had like sent my podcast to some people or told some people about like, hey, you have to change your mindset, and they just it was like they didn't get it.
Well, right. I think people expect speedy results, and
Yep.
changing that is like, what does that mean? You know, well, I mean, I even said that. What does that mean? Change your mindset. You just look at things a little bit differently. It's not for some, you know, it's not some psycho thing. It's not a big, huge,
No.
oh, I've got a major emotional problem, I've got to get help. It's just, you know what? You're okay. You're not a failure. You're doing great. And it's made such a difference.
Yeah. It's all the little stuff, like how we look at things, right? And you think you made a mistake, or you think that one mistake is going to be detrimental to your entire success. And it's like, I say this to clients all the time. There's 3 meals a day, 365 days in a year. That's 1,095 meals. Like, so what if
Yeah.
you like made a mistake and you were off track one day? It all comes back to averages. That's what consistency is all about. It's not about one particular meal or even one week. Or, and then sometimes people get caught up in the mindset of like, I can't go for a 10-minute walk because it's not good enough. It's not far enough. It's not perfect enough. It's like, no, we have to change that mindset. We got to flip it around. That is good enough because it's better than nothing. You're doing nothing, and now you're doing a 10-minute walk consistently 7 days a week. That's way better than where you are right now. So this is, I think, what you're saying, like these little flips that we need to make in our mindset. It's not like we need to go to extensive, mindset therapy. It's these little different perspective shifts that we need to change around, right? Because it's not being nice to yourself saying, I only went on a 10-minute walk today, or I only did this, or I screwed this up. That's not being very kind to ourselves, first of all. And it's never going to help you like move in the right direction. It's very judgmental. And you talked about the judgment, like what that did to you as a child, and how you felt so judged as a child. And now all the way up throughout your journey, you felt that way, even up until the point you first met with me, you were feeling that way. So, I mean, it's like that judgment doesn't help you. You're a good example of that.
Yeah, that's right. That's so right. And it's, I don't know what would have happened to me if I'd found you when I was, well, you wouldn't have been born yet, but when I was in my 40s. Would I have been able to do this? I don't know. But anyway, I wish it had happened sooner, but I'm really happy that it's happened now.
Yeah. Yeah. And, for the listeners listening, what did we work on most of the time? Were we dieting most of the time, or what were we doing nutritionally, would you say?
No, I was definitely not. I was learning how to maintain.
Yeah.
I was learning how to eat at a level that included everything that I wanted to enjoy mindfully, and I was not restricting calories except for a very short period of time, that 12 or 16 weeks that it was. It ended about almost a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I was not looking for fast results.
Yep. We spent a short amount of time in a deficit for you, but once we got out of that deficit, we spent the rest of the time just maintaining and working on your mindset and your habits.
Exactly. Working on my mindset and working on my habits, which is really what needs to come first.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just been so freeing and so so fun to recognize that, hey, look at this. This is real life. I don't have to be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And are these all things you think you can do until you're 85 years old and beyond?
Yep. Because I'm telling you something, I'm going to live beyond 85 years old.
Good.
both of my parents made it to their 90s.
Wow.
Yeah.
So. And you're not starving and you no longer fear the treats. I actually remember when we started working on, introducing some of the treats and adding them in, you were really nervous about that.
I was really nervous about it. I was never a person that would like eat a whole sleeve of cookies or a pint of ice cream or anything like that. But I just didn't know if I could accept that as not being a failure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you screwed up. So I had to say, oh, look, nope, you don't think like that anymore. It's okay to eat these things. It's fine.
Yeah. You still were expecting to be judged.
Yep, I was.
Yeah.
I was for I don't know how many calls. I really thought, oh man, he's going to judge me. I did something wrong. But of course you never did. That is not what you're about.
Yeah. A lot of people do kind of have that worry that they're going to be judged. And there are some, nutritionists out there that do that, but it's not helpful. And, I understand if I want to help somebody, they come from a land of judgment. They come from a diet prison, right? They're living and dying by the scale like you were. Like, and you can only get out of that deprivation mindset if you stop the judgment and you stopped, that mindset of I constantly have to restrict, I constantly have to eat as little as possible. That only ends, like if you want to be out of the diet prison or being tied to the scale, that only ends by releasing the judgment, learning to do things imperfectly and consistently, and also by letting go of all that deprivation, which is a scary thing because that's been your guardrail or that's what you've learned through years of dieting.
Yep, through a lot of years.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, Kristin, I am just so thrilled with everything, that you learned and all the progress you made in your journey. I mean, I remember when we first started working together and you were super nervous and you were telling me about all the diets you have done. And I remember the first time we worked on adding more protein to your diet and you were just like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. And this is just helping so much. Right. And there were lots of times too where I remember you were just thrilled that you were able to, have some ice cream with your grandkids when you were at the shore during the summer and eating fun foods with them. And you were learning to eat them mindfully and not have so much fear around those foods. So, I mean, I'm just so happy that you have released yourself from, this many years of being in a diet prison. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you, Megan. I am thrilled too. I wish everybody could have a Megan. It's just so great. And you know what? Keep on producing your podcast because I will listen forever. I love them so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that they're helping you. And, just know too that what you're putting out, right, by sharing your story, there's a lot of women that are going to hear this and resonate exactly with what you're saying. So, thank you for sharing your story. I know it can be a hard thing to do for some people to be vulnerable like that, but thank you for doing that and sharing your perspective and what's helped you. Just know you're helping other people by doing that. So I really appreciate that.
Oh. Well, you're very welcome. And honestly, the thought that it might help one other person is what got me to do it because I was a little bit hesitant.
Yeah. Everybody always is. I mean, if you're not doing something big and different, you're not actually, if you're doing something, how do I want to say this? If you're not doing something big and different, right, there isn't going to be any type of resistance. But if you are doing something big and different, you are going to feel a twinge of nervousness. That's totally normal.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yep. I'm definitely not like Newman Weight Watchers.
Right. You are definitely not.
Yeah. I don't know why a lot of people keep going back to those programs. I think because they're easy and they give you fast results, but there's only so many times you can go back until you realize like, these programs aren't really giving you what you need. They're just teaching you a lot of crash dieting. So,
That's true. And yet, if it's the only thing that you know of
yep.
that might help you, you think it might help you, but it's so sad that they don't. They just want you to keep coming back.
Yeah. Anyway, Kristin, well, thanks so much for your time today. I appreciate all of your feedback and sharing your story with everyone. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Megan.
Hey, if you enjoyed this podcast, you have to come check out my free weight loss class. It's the 5 steps to lasting weight loss, how hormones impact weight loss, and the truth about lasting weight loss without relying on willpower, workouts, or deprivation. Click the link in the show notes to watch that free class today. And if you are a woman over 35 with 20 to 50 or more pounds to lose, schedule a free weight loss breakthrough session with me after you watch that class. And let's talk about your 20 to 50 or more pound weight loss plan.